off trail camp.
Jesus,
Run
you
camp.
quick started me on that when I wasn't even ready. Welcome. It's November 10th.
Moving, man.
No,
you know me,
that.
I'm a morning guy.
We're already late. Welcome aboard. It's November 10th, 2020. Welcome aboard. This is a Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 424.
You got it.
Is it 424?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm a smooth operator today. It's Tuesday. We usually come to you on Mondays and Thursdays, but we always come to you twice a week. We have so for the last 4 years. So we appreciate you tuning in today. Mike and I are both coaches and athletes. Been doing well. We've been best friends for what can I say, like 20 years now? Is that going to make you feel better about
20 years?
Okay, at least 20. Back when I was 20 and Mike was 38, 37?
Yep.
Yeah, something like that. But no, we appreciate you tuning in. We know you have a lot of opportunities in the triathlon podcast universe and podcasts in general, and that your time is valuable. So we appreciate you giving us an opportunity today. We'll do our short intro, and as usual, hopefully try and negative split this podcast. But we talk about it all. We talk about triathlon. We talk about life. We talk about some of the more specific aspects of training for the sport and swim, bike, and run. We'll do nutrition every once in a while, race recaps, race previews, and we'll do a little bit of a race recap today, having had Ironman Florida finally take place, and also Gulf Coast 70.3 happened over this last weekend. You got in a week and a half or about 10 or 11 days, you've got Ironman Cozumel, Ironman Arizona, Texas 70.3. They're all happening. And I'm really excited that those are taking place. I'll talk through some of that today, but sometimes we'll also have on guests. But for the most part, we just kind of sit back, relax, and have an open, honest discussion about what we're personally going through, oftentimes what our athletes are going through, and then even on occasion, we'll hop into our closed group, which you can find that on Facebook. You can search Crushing Iron Group, answer one simple question, and we'll let you in. And there's a whole lot of great conversation there, a lot of really wise and experienced people that are always open to giving you their time and answering your questions. And not a lot of sarcasm, definitely no bullying, and like you might get in other triathlon groups. So just a whole lot of good people, so you can hop in there. And sometimes we'll even let them drive the conversation of the cast. But we have no sponsors. We have no ads. Our one agenda is to keep you happy and healthy so you can participate in the sport for as long as possible.
And I guess I'm living proof that it all works.
You're
getting old,
You're
man.
not that old.
Way up there.
For the record, Mike,
still rolling.
Are you 57?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike's 57, I'm 40. Now we're officially, now that I've kind of made the turn into old man's land, we are now like two old dudes talking about triathlon and life.
Yeah.
No, we kind of held on to the young buck in his 30s and the old man in his 50s, but now we're kind of the just two old dudes talking about triathlon and life and trying not to be grumpy about things.
Veterans is a good word.
I'll take veterans.
Experienced, still rolling,
we
still
did
trail running.
Still, you're all about the trail running right now. We did. We just came off a run camp. That's why we are coming to you on Tuesday this week instead of our usual Monday podcast. We usually kind of take a break and recharge after camps, even though they are incredibly energizing. And this is, I'll just go ahead and say this is probably one of my favorite camps we've ever had.
You do that.
I do it every time. I'm such a prisoner
better.
of the moment. They keep getting better. The people are awesome. We had an awesome time. We were blessed with absolutely fantastic weather. It was just phenomenal. And the backdrop there at 5-Star Retreat where we stay in Nunley, Tennessee is it's incredible. It's quiet. We extended it a day this year and this coming February for run camp. And we do it. We get there Wednesday night. You park your car and you don't have to get back in your car until Sunday. We share meals together. We have dinners catered in every night. We had breakfast come in Sunday morning, and just a really great opportunity to kind of just relax and detach from, what we have to do, the responsibilities that we have in regular life, and just kind of, honestly, just kind of be a kid again. I mean, that's kind of the vibe that I got from a lot of the athletes, and the feedback that I got from them was that it was just nice to just kind of energize and just kind of feel like a kid again and enjoy things and run and still work hard, but at the same time, not be so serious. It's like we find ourselves being so overly serious all the time about everything that we do, and running on the trails that we ran on at run camp, there's really no point in being serious maybe about your pace and your time, because they're not overly difficult, but they are definitely challenging. And so it was, I think that just helps detach from the reality of what we usually take ourselves, which is triathletes have a tendency we just take ourselves too seriously sometimes, because, we wear spandex and chamois cream and alien helmets, and we should by all rights be taken very seriously.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I need to actually find my dusty alien helmet and make sure I have like all the stuff I need to do to race next week. That's on my list to do for this week.
That's right. It's coming down.
Yeah. It's been over 2 years, so we'll figure it out.
Wow. You're so right, man. And everybody, it's like, as we've known, since I've gotten into this sport, I've known that it can be a little intimidating to come into new environments. And I think that what I saw again this weekend is like, everybody kind of comes in. It's sort of like going back to school. You're not sure who's going to be different or whatever. And everybody, like that first night and that second night, it's just the bond is really nice to see. And like you're saying, we do take ourselves seriously, but those hills and the structure of everything really lends itself toward individual growth, and it's kind of your own pace. And every single time I am just blown away by how just about everybody walks away from there feeling a lot more confident about their ability because they've done something that they didn't think they could do. And here we saw it again, and everyone was just on that Saturday when you set it up to where people could run a 10K or a half marathon, as long as it takes, no rush, any of that sort of thing.
No
and
time
you just
limit.
found everybody trying to push their limits at their own speed. And it was incredible because there was no like clock ticking really. And it was just really cool to see people like, we're doing our polar plunge and there's people out there still running, and we jumped in the creek and it was freezing cold water, and it was just a blast.
The beauty of it, and this is what I think so many athletes could use or refocus on, is the measuring of success because it was a challenging run course. Like, it wasn't easy. And I think within those challenges that we find in training and in life, like when we stop focusing on a specific result that's going to tell us that we succeeded, and we strip away all of that, all the expectations, all the data, all the numbers, all the comparison from the years past. And it's just like today, it was no time limit, but I made the course and I knew it was challenging. I knew the extra little second loop that I made was going to be a doozy. And it ended up being, like, just for kind of perspective, like I ended up doing 4 loops. It was just about 14 miles, but it was like 2,600 feet of elevation gain on trails. It was very, very difficult. And it ended up being like 75. It was a very warm November morning for us. Mm-hmm. But everyone was so incredibly proud, and had nothing to do with their pace or their time. It was all simply boiled down to one thing, which I think is the most important thing in life and in sport, which is effort and your intention. And everyone lined up that morning and they had their stuff ready. There was no big hoopla. There was no big cannon. There was no, there's kind of some pre-race music, but there was no no huge fanfare and no comparison of years past and races. It was just like, I get to go out here on a Saturday on a beautiful day in the middle of nowhere, quietly by myself, and just push myself and put forth effort. And I think that is inherently where so many athletes find so much growth and positivity in endurance sports, is that it's about the effort. It's like, and I go back to this a lot with other athletes, and because that's where you grow and that's what you learn from it. And sometimes athletes will get discouraged when they see other athletes like, well, because it's always like this, half-handed, backslide brag they do on Facebook. It's like, yeah, I didn't really train for this race. I just kind of picked my bike up like 2 weeks ago and ended up doing like a 5:30, and this other athlete's like, I've been training my ass off for like 2 years and I was slower than that person. And, so what gives? And like, it's really discouraging. Like, I've had people reach out to me and be like, this is really discouraging. And like, I don't understand. I don't say I don't understand. I get it on the surface of, oh, well, why am I not that? But to me, when it comes down to the integrity of what you're trying to accomplish, which is consistent effort and working hard, then I applaud the person with the slower time that worked their butt off. And I don't applaud the person with the faster time that just kind of slipped their way into, a somewhat faster time by, half-assing their work and not being consistent and not taking it seriously. Like, I would give a much larger standing ovation, a round of applause to the person who's been working their tail off, because that's what you're rewarded from. Like, the person who just picks up their bike or hops in the local turkey trot 5K and runs a faster time, like the reward they get is just that day. and it's very small because it's over in 25, 30 minutes for a 5K. But the reward you get for working hard and being consistent and figuring things out and getting up when you don't want to get up and fighting through bad days and enjoying the good days and just figuring new things out about yourself and the experience it is endurance sports, like that's the reward, right? And I think that's where when we did that race, or we did this style event or race, or whatever you want to call it, on Saturday, it was an opportunity to allow people to shed all of those other things that tend to weigh us down when we introduce ourselves into competition, which is, I've got to meet this expectation. People are going to look at my results. I've got to compare it to last year's. It was just because none of it mattered. It was just, and there was no age groups, there was no awards, there was no, like competition. It was just like, I can go out there and what I'm going to do is just do my very, very best and see what I can do today. And that's how I felt when I went out there. I was like, I had no expectations. I had never done the course. I was like, I just wanted to see if I can run the, like, you know how it is. Like you always have like tiered goals. It's like, I want to run the whole thing. Then I kind of think I want to do this. Then I kind of think I want to do this. And you kind of work your way through it. But no matter what, you're happy with your end result as long as you put forth effort, because that is what makes you feel good is the effort that you put forth.
Yeah. And what I always find interesting is I think how hard it is for a lot of people to get into this sport and, like that maybe well out of shape and struggling and overweight and things like that. And then you see it, like we've seen it over time, like several people that have just completely transformed. And then you look at people like that join that, jump in that 5K and just crush it kind of, just, yeah.
But do they crush it? But they don't crush it, right?
Yeah, that's my thing is like, I think it's almost, it's all relative because it's just as hard for that person to get, like they're at a point now where it's like, how do they get to the next level? And that becomes some serious work. And I just think it's easy a lot of times to, let that go and not really go after it just because you're sort of already there. And I think we saw it this weekend. There's some good runners out there that were really pushing it. And they were trying to get better, and you could see it. It's just all relative to me. And a lot of them would just, they were kind of running with some of the other people that were out there a little bit longer, and they were kind of done. And they're like, hey, I'm going to keep going with you. And there was just a lot of that sort of thing. But to me, it's really interesting when people, and honestly, I've never been an endurance athlete, but I kind of put myself in that first bucket that you're talking about, the guy that just sort of shows up sometimes. Yeah, and I know firsthand how difficult that is to really kind of, once you hit a plateau of sorts, to go further. And it's like a major commitment, and I think that we have to think about that as athletes who have done a lot of these races and keep thinking in our brains that, we can go faster, but like, are we really ready to commit to what it takes to do that?
It's always easy in the beginning. Yeah. It's like January, we were actually talking about this at camp because I'll be honest, a lot of times our run camps, you come out way more than when you started, even though we run like 40 miles. Like we eat freely and we have a good time. Like it's definitely not a weight loss camp where we're doing like fitness model shoots. Like we get to work. We work hard, we play hard, we eat hard. But I was talking with those athletes, like and what you say, it's so true with being consistent and like really trying to stay the course with what you're doing as an athlete, is that, the gains that you see initially can be huge, right? Because you can take minutes and sometimes hours, right? Off of races. And then it's like, January 1st, like, I'm going to lose weight. And the first 2 weeks are dropping like 5 or 6 pounds. I'm like, dude, you're just dropping like the alcohol, the turkey and dressing you like shoved in your mouth the last like 2 months. Like it's not like, it's going to get more difficult. It's going to get harder to lose, as it always is. The last few inches, if you're doing it by inch, the last few pounds are always the hardest to lose. And that's when a lot of people tend to turn away and be like, I'm close enough. Like I've just got there. And then there's nothing wrong with that. But people do that in sports. They do that in business, do that in life. They think, I'm close enough. Like, that this is good enough, because you see these huge results or these, you're racing Olympics or 70.3s or Ironman, you're taking like chunks and chunks and chunks off. And then like, I'll use my 70.3s, for example, because I used to always do Gulf Coast when it was before it was an Ironman brand event. I did it 6 years in a row. My very first 70.3 was like a 6:13 or 6:17. And then I think I ended up chipping down like from a 6:17 to like a 5:30, and then a 5:30 to a 5:15, and a 5:15 like a 4:50, and then a 4:50 to like a 4:40, and then a 4:40 only like took like 5 minutes off. So like you're going from like dropping like 45 minutes down to like 3 or 4 minutes. And it's like, God, like you when you think about all of the work that goes in to trying to get better, and it's like, and I'm only saying minutes. Like it doesn't feel like I'm really getting what I want. The work isn't, the return on investment isn't what I'm wanting. But so when you get to that end, that end of your limit, it's harder to find the seconds in the minutes, but the work is exponential. The work is never going to stop. You just have to keep doing it. And it's the pursuit, right? It's the pursuit of trying to get there and accomplish these great things, because that's why most people, say like they talk about the brain. It's like most of us like will never even like come even like remotely close to using like our brain for what it really is, right? It's like, and same thing with our body. Like most of us will never even like come close to reaching our fullest athletic potential, because we'll either get, distracted, or we'll get discouraged, or we'll get injured, or we'll just quit, or, and obviously like, life dictates a lot of that, but it's hard to stay the course. And I think that was part of, one of the reasons why I was so just incredibly proud of all of the athletes that made it through this year to race at Ironman Florida, because it was kind of like that in a way. It was just like, the year was like everywhere you turn, it was like, you're not racing. Deferral. Are you sure you want to defer? Are you sure you don't want to defer? Like, we're going to offer it to you. You know what? Let's just send one more email out 3 weeks out and be like, you know what? Are you sure you don't want to defer? All these like, tantalizing, escape routes and doors that were like, you can let off the gas. It's okay. Take a break. And the fortitude and the resiliency and the determination that we had 10 athletes race, it was one of my I say this all the time, whatever, saying I can't, but it was one of my prouder days as a coach. It was like to know that many of our like 10 athletes showed up and they saw it through and they competed and they finished, and they, to be honest with you, a lot of them had really, really outstanding days. I think it was just a testament to how resilient, not that they've more than likely be, not that they've come through with like our coaching, what we do, but like how the pursuit, no matter what, of accomplishing or going after what you really want, regardless of what everyone else is saying, regardless of what events are getting canceled, and regardless of the year is happening, that's the growth I think that showed up on race day. Was like, I see you pandemic. I see you, economy. I see you people out there saying you shouldn't be racing or the racing shouldn't happen. But you know what? I'm gonna keep doing my deal. And then they show up on race day and do it. And it's like how powerful that must feel, just to be able to complete that thing and make it there when you know how hard it's been. And it showed up, and I've read like so many post-race comments and kind of race recaps, and I want to get to one here in a little bit, just because I think it summarizes the emotions that you go through. I think it'd be a great listen for any athlete and period who's done Ironman, but especially for the ones who haven't done one, as we kind of talk about a lot. It's like, you're gonna feel every emotion you can possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. But just to know and make it through that, I think it says a lot about pursuing something that you love and that you want to do in the midst of so many doubts and uncertainty. And then when you get there, the accomplishment, and now like knowing going forward, it's like, really? You think I can't do this next year? It's like, and obviously like, every year has its own challenges. Like, and I tell people all the time, like, they're like, what's the hardest race you've ever done? I'm like, the one I'm training for right now, because it's all life always has challenges it's going to throw you. And the one you're training for right now is always going to be the hardest one you're training for.
Mm-hmm. And going back kind of to what you're talking about, the idea of training so hard to cut off a few minutes, what about those times when, I think you did this the last year that you were racing, was you actually had a better race that was slower? Is that true?
What do you mean? What do you mean better race that was slower?
Oh no, you finished in
my least. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying sometimes you can have a better race and actually not be as fast as your best time. And
oh yeah,
you know that in your bones. And I think that's the thing, you know, I'm sorry. It's just like when you get done, a lot of times for me, the judgment falls on how I feel. And it's like how I had control of that race and all that sort of stuff, because then, my fastest races early on, you know, that are kind of still holding up in some ways, were just shell fests. You know, and I was just talking to you about like how I'm training right now on the hills right now, the trails, and how I'm slowly trying to pick it up and get faster and faster and faster. And I have a goal time of whatever it is. And I said to you that I think I could do that now, but that is so premature at this time. You know, there's like, that's the whole thing of training within yourself and taking it to the point where, and really that's the number one thing on my mind right now, is to get into this next year and do my next Ironman from a position of strength and not, you know, like fear or over pressing or over trying and that sort of stuff, but to be able to come in and basically control my race from the get-go all the way through it.
I think it goes back to like intention and effort. You know, it's like, and I mean, you said like, and I've mentioned this, I think a couple of times in different podcasts, but 2018 was last year that I raced, and it wasn't my worst result of the year, but it was the race I was most disappointed in myself was the one that I placed the highest. Like I came in fifth and made it on the podium at Chattanooga 70.3, and I crossed the finish line, and I don't want to say I was disgusted with myself, but I was very disappointed, because, and I'm not saying that in like I'm being hard on myself way, like, oh, you just always doing better. Be grateful for what you have. And like, I get that. And I am, like, I was very happy. But for me, like, I mean, I guess where I am currently with the sport is like, I was disappointed with how I handled the internal struggle. That was because I think I was coming off such a commanding, or I had commanded it and like controlled it so well just a month prior at Galveston, which was in April, which is the most proud I've ever been finishing a race, because I feel like I had dealt with the demons that day that was like, you can slow down, you can walk, you know, you can do it right. Just take a break and slow jog. You're still doing great. And I floored it and I gassed and I was done. And I was just proud of being totally spent. And I was proud of every decision that I made that day. And it wasn't like I was proud. I mean, I raced smart. I raced very smart on the bike, but on the run, I was just very proud of every negative thought that I had. I immediately was like, no, I was like, I'm not falling for this. Like, I'm going to keep pushing. In fact, I'm going to push harder. And so I was just proud of how I was able to mentally and emotionally navigate that day that allowed me to end up, it was my fastest time of the year, but the next race in Chattanooga, I did it, and I mentally just wasn't there. Like, I think we've all had races where we have a good result, but mentally I was just like, yeah, like my legs didn't show up till like mile 20 or maybe mile 30 of the bike. Like it was hot that day. I just didn't feel it. Like I was just off. And I ended up like, and we told a story, I think just a few months ago, like I I peeled things back, and I took my heart rate strap off to start the run. I was like, I'm gonna look at my watch. It was so hot. Tossed it to Renee Black and Shamika. And I was like, just hold this, hold the sweaty heart rate strap. And took off running, and then I peeled off to head over the pedestrian bridge, come back over, and John Minton was like, hey dude, you're currently fourth. I was like, oh my God, you jerk. Like I just wanted to kind of cruise it, right, which I had the same feeling like this last weekend when I was on my fourth loop. I was like on that hill across the creek. I was like, I'm totally going to like hike a little bit of this and give myself a breather. And I saw some athletes. I was like, oh my God, I just got to keep running. Here we go. In that positive period. But anyway, I finished. I just wasn't happy with how I dealt with it. And so, right, the result's great, the podium, whatever, but it still eats me up, like, because I don't like, and I think it's different for every athlete. Like if you're performance based or you're age group ranking based or podium based, but that's like, to me, that's not on my top 3 list of like, what's the biggest accomplishment you want to have today? Like what's going to make you feel the best when you drive home? Because those kind of things you can't control, right? There's like, you can't control who shows up. You can't control how fast they're going to be. You can't control any of that. All you can control is yourself, your execution, and your effort. And I was very happy with my execution that day in Chattanooga, but I was very disappointed in my effort at points. Like I just feel like I could have done better and dealt with those internal struggles better. And that's kind of my measure of success now as an athlete. And sure, I have, things I want to do and accomplish still in the sport and times I want to beat, but I know that I won't be able to probably do those unless I'm able to put it all together and have another one of those days where I can mentally and emotionally push myself. And I'm trying to kind of get myself there as it kind of dawns on me that like, I'm supposed to race like, a week from Sunday. And as I was talking to like Hayden yesterday, I was like, hey man, one day this week we need to like go through my stuff and make sure I have everything, because it's been so long since I raced. I got to make sure I've got like everything that I need. If I need to order something, like I need to have it shipped like ASAP. And it's just been a while. So I'm trying to get my head back in that space of like, you're racing again. You're in pretty good shape, maybe not the best shape I've ever been, but I'm in pretty good shape. But then as soon as you start to recognize that you're kind of in better shape, then it's like you get that like expectation angel on your shoulder. It's like, oh, you're in shape. What kind of time do you think you can do? What kind of place do you think you can make? And you're like, shut your mouth. Like, it's just not on my top of my list, but it's still hard, I think, to disregard that voice or that kind of internal feeling of I think it's healthy to have goals, but in terms of like expectations that are irrelevant when it comes to your ability to execute an effort, and they're all based on placing, then you can't do that, because you could have a perfect day. You could have the best day that you could put together ever, and not place as high enough as you might as you show up to a different race, and not many people show up, and you end up, doing whatever and placing better. It's very relative. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's very, very relative. It could be anything. The day could go any way. You could feel anything, and it's all about how you finish and how you feel you handled and navigated all the feelings and all the physical pain and jubilation that you can have on race day.
I was just thinking about that with regard to like the last race I did was Wisconsin last year, and it happens, I'm so fascinated by that in-race discussion with yourself and the demons and whatever is coming up, because, I've done Wisconsin 3 times, and 2 out of those 3, I think I've been under 12 hours. But the last year, I remember this discussion with myself in the beginning of that second lap. It was like, I think I had to cut off like 10 minutes or something to get under 12 again. And at about mile 4, I think I just said, no. I'm okay. I'm all right with 12:08 or whatever it turns out to be. And I'm just like, I know that I could have done it, but it was like, why can't I talk myself into it? It's like, okay, I can't beat my best time here. It's the same course, different day, different conditions a little bit, but it felt similar, whatever. But why is that? And I don't know, man. It's just like, how do you flip that switch and say, hey, this is a different day, and you still got I just didn't want to put myself through that pain I knew was there.
Because you've been there.
I've been there. I understand it. And it, to me, like 8 minutes or 10 minutes wasn't worth it. But is it? It's like,
I think that's the question that I think
it feels like it is right now as I sit here.
Right.
Like, damn it, I want that
back
score, man. It's like score's out there forever.
But when you think of it, like all you should, and it's obviously easiest for us to say sitting in 2 recliners, but it's like, it's easier to say that now, but in the moment, and I think this is true on all, like, that's why it's even so hard. And I think it's so, I don't want to say unhealthy, but it can be so discouraging to even compare yourself to any race, in even the same race at the same location, the same time of year, because the weather's going to be different, the wind's going to be different, everything, you're going to be different, your life's going to be different. You can't it's not an apples to apples comparison. But what you should go out, and you kind of said this a minute ago, is like, instead of going out and trying to beat your best time from so-and-so year, our goal for every race, and this is the same thing with training, instead of trying to shove yourself into a box of overtraining or undertraining, is acceptance of the best you have today. And I think when you race, if you have that, like, really all I want to do is the best, I want to squeeze the most out of me that I can today. That might not get me the same squeeze, that I got out of myself 3 years ago, but at least it'll be the best I got out of me today. And obviously, like, that's why that Chattanooga race still eats me up. Like, it sounds like, it was like, gosh, like in the moment it feels so easy or it feels so much better to be like, I'm still going to be here. I can probably, so, cause I admittedly so, like I told myself, I bet you I can cruise this last half and play it fairly conservative. I didn't know how far the guy behind me was, but I feel like I can probably cruise and still stay on the podium, right? And still be there and accomplish whatever that even means. Cause it doesn't, it's irrelevant in a lot of ways, because what eats me alive is that I didn't push myself to squeeze every ounce out of me that day. But I also knew, like you say, I know what that feels like, and it sucks. Like it's because I also think that's why it's so hard to race so close together. And I think that was probably playing in the back of my mind when I was in Gout, because I
already proved it.
I had just done it. Like I had just squeezed every ounce out of me. Like I remember seeing like blurry spots and like on the last mile of the run. And I remember thinking like, I don't know that I'm going to make it to the finish line without like completely collapsing. Cause I stopped like I skipped the last aid station coming back around by the lake or the ocean, river in the bay. Cause I was like, if I stop and even like remotely like stop forward progress, then I'm probably going to stop like for good. And I was like, I think I can make it to the finish line. So I know what it feels like to go into that area of pain in that zone. And then when you're done, you're like, God, that sucks so bad. Although it's super like, invigorating and you feel energized and you're super proud of yourself for going there and putting yourself through that. But then when you get that way again, you're like, I don't know that I want to do that again. I don't know that I want to touch the hot stove again. Like it doesn't feel. And so you're weighing the current comfort of, do I go there again? Or God, it would feel good to just not go there again, versus weighing how I felt in the week after that, which was, God, I'm so pissed. Like I was so pissed that I didn't push myself. And again, it had nothing to do with the result on paper. It was just that I wasn't even happy that I got I got the awards were canceled that day, and because the storm came in and they ended up mailing me my award, and I got it and I was like, meh. I was like, I'm not even really like happy with this. And I'm not saying that it sounds like I'm not happy with the accomplishment. I understand it's an accomplishment, but I was just disappointed with myself and my effort. And I think that's like, but I think it's important to state, because and I tell athletes all the time, and we get very wrapped up in our place, where we are, our place in the world, our place, versus so-and-so and so-and-so. And, who do we beating on Strava and who are we faster on Zwift? And like all this, like we get so caught up in our place within the world that the place that matters most is the competition within yourself and the comparison with who you are today versus who you were last year or 2 years ago, and what you're battling now and how you're handling that, right? Because I think a lot of that, I think it's very understated, the amount of success and the amount of gratitude and the amount of like positive self-talk we could all have with ourselves if we really measured, and I think it's almost impossible, and that's the bad thing. It's like almost impossible to weigh and to calculate. It's like, how well am I doing now with what I have and the time I have and the life I have, and the responsibilities and the stress and the world we live in, versus where I was 3 or 4 years ago. Like that's why while Ironman Wisconsin, the year you and I did it together in 2016, I was like, in my opinion, that's my best Ironman. Even though it was my fastest time, I feel like it was my best because I was going through so much stuff in life personally. And Hayden was 7 weeks old, and I was spending I was stretched super thin, and I was like 5 or 6 minutes slower off of my previous one, which is my PR, which is Ironman Arizona. It still to me is my proudest day because I really pushed myself and I really felt like I squeezed every bit out of what I had, not just that day, but the time that I was given with life and with stress the weeks before. Like Hayden had an absolutely horrific delivery experience. Like he was in the NICU. It was not like what you want as a lead up, but I was just very, very proud of how I was able to navigate getting to that point, and then finding a way to, when life is stressful and the world we live in is hectic, it's like to find, I still can find a way to purposefully put myself in an uncomfortable position that's going to be painful, knowingly uncomfortable and painful for the next 11 hours, 10 hours, whatever it is. It's going to be very, very painful and uncomfortable, yet I'm choosing to do it. And I think and that's what people I think should judge themselves different, or I would hope would judge themselves more differently, or not judge at all in training, is to judge every single training session that you do as a success or a failure. It's like you have to navigate it with effort and with time and with life and take all that into account, because it opens up so many more opportunities to frankly just be proud of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talk about it kind of a lot, but I just looked up my actual time from Wisconsin. It was actually 12:04. So now you're even more chapped. Yeah. Right. So but I mean, I totally know what happened, right? It's that pain that you talked about, and it's not mile 1 pain. It's not 6 mile pain of an Ironman. It turned out to be that day. It started around mile 14. And if I could just have somehow ran my race in a more smarter way and delayed that pain towards mile 20, then it's like, oh, you got 6 miles of this? I can go through that. But like when you're talking about 10 to 12 miles of it, that's when you get into that dilemma. So I was actually talking to somebody about this earlier, was like, it's all that, like, if you can do that in a half, for example, it's the same type of deal. Can you get to mile 10? Cause then you got a 5K and then you can do that pain. And then it's like, in my case, I mean, you kidding me? I easily could have restructured my attitude and my performance for that first 20 miles to get to the point where I was not dying at mile 14. It's like, so what you can do. And it's always that, it's like you get out there and you're just like, I feel good. And that's, it's a false positive in a way, because of course you feel good. You've been training a lot, in the first 5-6 miles, you're going to feel like, yeah, man, I'm going to pick it up more than I thought no. It's always that. And I could tell, like, cause I've been doing a lot of heart rate, running lately and I've been pulling back. And so like this weekend we were on the trails out there, I was holding back and it turned into my longest run of the year. And I felt great when I got done. I was like I was 7.5 miles or something like that. And I'm like, I'm going to do that again. And I said, nope. I mean, it was an hour and a half or something like that. And I think my longest run before that was like 50 minutes. So now I'm like, okay, I'm way over, but I'm feeling good. So I'm just going to pull back. And that's the old thing, right? It's like, when you're in a race and you're feeling good, pull back. That's what Ironman. That's my new motto in a way. It's like, I feel really good here, but it's only mile 28 on the bike. Just kind of back it down a little bit. Like stay. I mean, it's amazing, like we get so weirded out by like how, a mile an hour or half a mile an hour on bike pace or 20 seconds per mile on a run pace is going to make or break our race, like, down the road. But like, it's amazing how if you watch somebody in front of you that's going a little bit faster, how long it takes them to get away, like the momentum and the just staying in the game goes a long ways rather than, getting out in front of that person or trying to chase that person. Just let your body and your mind come into it. And sometimes that takes a long time.
I mean, there was 2 things I love what you said there. Like one of them is, and talking about you were like way over your longest run of the year and you were like, I'm gonna do another one. But instead you were like, but what I'm doing has been working. It wasn't like I haven't been overdoing it and I've gotten to here and it's working because I went pretty over today and I feel pretty good. Why would I go over it? Which is the opposite of what I've been practicing, which is that patience, right? And so you learn from that. But then also so much within, like, we were talking about the race at Wisconsin. It's like, it's judging, I think, how long your wick is for the day. Because like, we was talking about burning a match and like, lighting it or your candle, whatever. And you're like, how is it time to light it? Like how, because it takes so many people just light it out of the gate, and then they don't have any idea how long the wick is. They just implode. And I went through the same thing as I was running on Saturday. I was like, all right, let me just figure out what I got after like 2 loops. And then let me just kind of inch my way. And I didn't have a time goal because I was irrelevant. Time was irrelevant. But I finished the first loop and I was kind of trying to go for like even splits. I didn't want to like implode because if you imploded there, it was going to be a very miserable day. And I started off, I made the first loop in like 8:58, I think was my average. And I was like, all right, my goal now is just to even pace it and hold it under 9s. I feel like that would be an accomplishment. And after like the second one, it was like down to 8:54. And I was like, wonder if I can go under 8:50. And is it time for me to go under 8:50? No. And so I held it, and my third lap was when I was like, all right, you need to judge how much longer, because you're already going to burn some of it just through the first two loops. It's like, how much longer is the wick that I have? Like, can I light the match now? Because if I do it and I burn it, then I'm going to just like, it's going to suck. And so I think I actually slowed down some on the third, and then it saved me because I was able to bring it home on my fastest, which is the fourth loop, and brought it down and actually went under 850s for the loop and for the whole day. But if I had have pulled the trigger, but that was all I had. So if I pulled the trigger earlier, it'd been like, I would have crumbled and maybe even slowed back down some. It's about understanding who you are and what you have that day. And then also judging, like, because you have to be there mentally and emotionally to pull the trigger too. To like to burn it. You can't, because if you're not interested in being uncomfortable, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what kind of fitness you have. Doesn't matter if you walk up to the start line, no matter how fit you are, no matter how great you feel, no matter what kind of training, if you're not there mentally and emotionally, you're not willing to take those extra steps to get there, then a person with less fitness that is willing to go there will do it. Right? It's like you see it all the time in professional sports, like, a team that, has no business being there on the same field, talent-wise, when the team shows up just amped out again, they're like, "This is my day. Like we're gonna take it from you." And the team that's like ranked number one or to supremely talented, they come in and being like, "This is a cakewalk. Like I got this." And like by the time they know what's hit them, they're down 40. We're down 20. They're like, "Oh, we got to get it together." And then, but there's no doing it. Like you understand you're up against this buzzsaw that is somebody who's supremely motivated and willing to go that extra level or that extra dial of extra pain and discomfort or focus that you're not wanting to go to. And that can jump you from, a lack of talent or a lack of ability or a lack of fitness. Like you have to be able to put it all together on that one day, which is again, why endurance sports are so incredibly hard, because the day is so long and so many things can happen that in order to have the perfect day, that's why it can be so frustrating to constantly chase that perfect day. Like the most perfect day I've ever had was Ironman Arizona, my fastest time ever in Ironman. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It wasn't, I don't even want to say it was like painless because it wasn't. Everything went perfect for me that day. And to think that I'm going to have a day like that again is naive, because you're only going to have one perfect day. So all you can really focus on is doing the best and squeezing the most out of what you have and what your body is willing to give you that day. And the only way that you can do that is to be physically, is to be mentally and emotionally prepared to go there if the opportunity presents itself to take you that extra, like for you, to take off those extra 4 minutes, and to be there. And if you're not willing to go there, then no matter what your body's willing to do, because oftentimes if we want it to, our body will do it. Like our mind is what tells it, your body could have done it, and we all have those moments like, I feel like I probably could have gone it, but you have to be willing to do that. And it's a tough conversation to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the other thing with that football analogy is you often see those teams come out and just riled up and ready to go. And they get up and, they're up 20 out of the gate. And then it's like the other team that has more patience and talent or whatever it is, they slowly just kind of come back and crumble them too. So that's like that overreaction that I try to avoid whenever I get out on the bike or the run. And I would be willing to say that for the most part, I fail a little. You know what I mean? Like I fail on the pointy end of coming out a little too excited, just to be off the bike or out of the water. And it's like, I gotta make up that time, whatever it is. And then I feel really good. And it's just such a long day that you have to, it's unbelievable. I think I've said this before, but I met a guy, like, I think it was my first or second Ironman, and we were in, the village the day before, and he's like, older guy. And he said, I always walk the whole first mile of the Ironman marathon just to let my body sink in and, be ready to go. And I've always been intrigued by that. It's because it's like, I don't know if I don't think I'd ever have the patience to do that, but maybe a half mile, I don't know. And then just to let your body literally transition from the bike to the run. And I would imagine that if you're like trying to walk, the first half mile or mile of an Ironman marathon, I would think that you would be like, you gather your thoughts and you'd be going, man, I really want to run, but I can't, I'm holding back. So you kind of change your mindset into like this runner guy, and it's something that you're really excited to do, and you kind of have your plan in place and you can kind of get your head around it. Because if you come flying out of T2 and Next thing you know, your legs are flapping up and you're going wild, like high-fiving everybody. And then by mile 2, you're like, man, what the heck did I just do? I might have just put my whole race in jeopardy in the first 2 miles. How many times do you think that happens?
All the time.
Yeah.
It's such I'm telling you, racing long distance is more about your ability to handle your mental and emotional, like your overall emotions. Like it's more about that than it is about what you express physically that day, what you can, because you won't be able to unless you can handle those emotions. And like, that's a perfect segue, but we had our, like I said, 10 athletes race at Ironman Florida. One of our athletes he did what I would consider like this is basically how not every Ironman feels, but this is kind of lengthy, so bear with me, but I think, and I'll probably stop here in a little bit, but I think it's a great example of how basically like no build is perfect. No taper is perfect. No race week is perfect. No race is perfect. Cause I skipped to a point where he said like at mile 15 of the bike, he thought about quitting. And, and so pre-race, he says, going into the race, I just wasn't excited mentally. I was still feeling tired, as I don't think my body really started tapering until this week. So he didn't feel like his body tapered until like race week, which is like what a lot of athletes feel like. 2 weeks out from the race, and ended up being the most stressful week of the year. Between work stress, life stress, plus he totaled his car, ran into a telephone pole. It was just like, everyone, most people have been like, it's going to ruin my race. I'm going to have a terrible day. Like those thoughts, like, and I think when you're tired and when you have these expectations too, like those thoughts creep in. You're like, see, you got an excuse. It's there. You totaled your car, right, man. Yeah. Life's stressful. Like, just don't worry about it. And he says, it was a really tough week and I feel like I only had 1 week to taper. The swim was fine. And he says a lot of things in here. And that's why I want to read the whole thing, because it's very true for, I feel like, how you should pace and think through an Ironman. He said, the swim was fine. The goal here was to conserve energy. And I was hoping I would be right around a 1 hour for the swim, which I nailed. He didn't feel very strong. He said, I don't feel like I'm in the best swim shape, but that's because we've been focusing so much more on running over the last several months. The worst part about the swim, which I think, which for most people and for 2 loop swims, was they had us run through the soft sand after we completed the first lap and started the second lap. So that takes extra time. He said he also whacked his head on a sandbar when trying to go under a wave, and that gave his neck a jolt, which after his car wreck wasn't really because he had to get adjusted the car, which wasn't really ideal. He said, I stayed to the right of all the yellow buoys in the second lap to steer clear of all the slower swimmers. The second lap was a lot tougher with chop than the first. I think the wind changed direction some. I love what he says about transition time. This is like my new favorite slogan for transitions. He said, the transition times for everyone was pretty long. And I think that's something that we all have to get used to until things get back to normal racing, is that the protocols they have now and how they have transition, like your transition times are going to be slower. Like they just are. He said, it was long for everybody, but my motto for transitions were slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I love that because so many people are so epically slow that there's no way it can be fast. And some people get in so much of a hurry, they're frantic and they forget what they're supposed to do. So I love that. The slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Slow down, be focused, but deliberate so you don't miss anything, and then get the hell out of there. He said, I nailed it. And the bike, this is the one where I think we've all felt this way. He said, the bike, with how I was feeling pre-race, I was really looking forward to just getting through the swim and hopping on the bike and counting on that to lift my mood. That didn't happen. I had no power in my legs the entire ride. Either that or my power meter wasn't working. It was probably a combination of both. It was really tough out there with the wind. Also, after getting through the swim, I felt the car wreck muscle trauma for the entire ride. My hips were screaming at me, and I was having a lot of glute and lower back and even some quad pain during the entire ride. The first 30 miles were super tough mentally. And at mile 15, thoughts of quitting were starting to creep in. So mile 15 of the bike, you've got just under 100 miles left of what you already have admitted is going to be a tough day, and you're already having thoughts of quitting. He said, I pushed those thoughts down and just pulled myself together. And once I turned out of the wind and got some tailwind and the sun came out, my mood was lifted. He said, with how I was feeling, my goal wasn't to hit a power goal. It was to ride by feel, keep it zone 2, keep it together and not force my legs. It's really brilliant racing. He said, keep it together and not force my legs into submission, and do my best to nail my nutrition, which I absolutely crushed. He saw, which is also a huge win for any athlete that's done it. I also peed on the bike for the first time. What a game changer. And 2 things, like the biggest thing there though, was that he he left his target power goal, which most athletes would obsessively adhere to no matter what, which is something that I talked with them about, like pre-race, was that I give you a power range and a power goal, but I'm not inside your body. Like, you know how to race. Like, you know, we've done enough rides and long rides on feel and effort. You should know your body by now, and you have to listen to it, because honestly, if he'd have stuck to his power goal, he probably would have shredded himself. Like he said, I would have biked myself and raced into submission, which his race would have been done. But instead he peeled it back and just focused on the thing he could control, which is nailing his nutrition. He said, T2, I took another leak, and then slow is smooth is fast, which I love that. He said, the run, as soon as I got off the bike, my legs felt strong. So you went from, I want to quit at mile 15. Like, we always talk about how many times your emotions are going to change over the course of a day. And he said, my legs felt strong. As soon as I got off the bike, my body wasn't even hurting anymore, and I was ready to rumble. I cleared out all of my data screens so I wouldn't give myself the option of seeing my pace. Okay. No triathlete does that, right? It's like, right. But it's something that I talk about in terms of like your pre-race strategy. I give them effort. Like I go on a scale of like 1 to 10, like this is how you should pace it effort wise. So data means nothing. He said, all I had on my watch was mileage, so I could make sure I was getting in a cliff block every 2 miles. Goal was to continue to nail my nutrition by stopping at every aid station quickly to make sure I got in what I needed, since they were spaced out every 2 miles instead of every mile. Again, something I think is important to note for those of us that are racing soon is that you're used to seeing an aid station every mile, and now it's every 2. So that will change probably how a lot of people race and do fueling. He said, I started off at a 4 out of 5 out of 10 effort-wise, which is what I recommend, and just stayed strong the entire run. I hit effort level 7 at the halfway point, again, which is perfect. And then he said I hit at mile 10, I didn't hit 10 out of 10 pain until mile 20 or 21, which is, I always tell people, if you can wait till you get to 10 out of 10 on pain at mile 20, you're destined for a great day. And he said the last 3 miles felt like total shit, as they should be. And anyway, he just fast forward, he said, I was calculated in the run. I knew I had to keep my mood elevated. I made some more friends at the start. As I passed them, we continued to support each other throughout the run. I was trying to say good job to almost everyone up until it got really dark, and up until I got into a really dark place at the end, and just kept my mood while encouraging others. Again, I don't think it can be overstated at how being grateful and like sharing encouragement can lift your spirits and kind of take you out of your own self by focusing someone on others, take yourself out of like that pain. And he said, I knew if I could use that to keep me in good spirits for hitting the caffeine hard in the second half, I was going to be in a good position. Anyway, he said, I gave that run all of me, everything I had. I had no idea what my pace was the entire run, and it never bothered me. I just kept going and enjoyed the hell out of the first 20 miles. And I love this too. I think it's a great way to approach a marathon in general. He said, I just kept telling myself, take off bite-sized chunks, 5K at a time, bite-sized chunks. And not like, I've got to win the whole 26, I've got to run the whole 26 miles. And he said, my other motto was win the moment. And all those moments piled up. They created a snowball effect and helped me roll me through the finish line. I was on the verge of collapsing by the time I reached it. And when I did, I broke down sobbing. The physical and emotional toll of the race, the year, the journey was just too much to bear, and I lost it for a solid 5 minutes. They noticed how overheated I was despite getting as much ice as I could from the aid stations, and got me to the med tent so I could cool off. I got my gear and found the fam easily. That was when they told me I accidentally went through the wrong finishing chute, so I had to go back to the finish line and get the right finisher medal. Mike Riley never said I was an Ironman, but I wouldn't have hurt him anyway if he did, and I didn't care, and I was. To me, last year at Louisville didn't count. A duathlon is not a triathlon. After the year I've had, all the niggles we have had to work through, and COVID and uncertainty of the race, even when happening 6 weeks out, what a year. We did it. We crushed it. I couldn't have had a better day. And like, talk about like just a roller coaster of emotions, just like reading it from like, I want to quit to best day ever. Right. Yeah. It's like, wow, it's amazing. I think it's a true testament to basically, you know, and I kind of had an idea where we're going for the podcast, but it's like how important it is to navigate those emotions, the good and the bad throughout the course race. And he ended up having a spectacular day. I thought it was like around a 10:45 total time. He ran 8:30s for the full marathon. And it's a great, you know, small example of how many emotions and thoughts, like you have to have these conversations with yourself, and without putting yourself in difficult situations and hard training and consistent training and, you know, bigger days. But most importantly is none of what he said was about time. It was about knowing your body and knowing your mind and what it needs and what it doesn't need and when you need it and how you like it. That allowed him to have what he considered a really awesome day. It had nothing to do with I met my power goals or I met my pace goal. It was him knowing his body, what his body needed, which was to not, bike himself into submission on the bike. So he disregarded power goals, right? Mm-hmm. He left up the side to nail his nutrition, something he could control. And then on the run, it was about what did he need mentally and emotionally to carry him physically. It wasn't, I got to find a pace on my watch and I got to stick to it no matter what and not care about whoever. It was like, he knew what he needed. And I think it's such an important lesson for us all when you line up or you take on a big event is, you need to know those things. Like you need to know what you really need. And if you're always obsessed with numbers and data, and once those are taken away and you have no idea what you need or how to pace yourself or how to know your body, or then you're lost. You are totally another athlete who was an excellent biker was like, I didn't feel super awesome. I was getting disappointed and discouraged on the bike, and I couldn't tell if my power meter was even working or not. So I ended up going off feel. And then she ended up running away onto the podium and as a self-proclaimed, like not very good runner. And I was like, I don't, it's like you just have to know who you are. And if you don't have those conversations with yourself in training, you're never going to know. Like you're just never going to know. And if you can't have that you don't want to have that conversation for the first time on racing. I think it's just a great example. So if you're racing coming up and you've got a race next year and you've never been an Ironman, like these are the things and conversations you need to be ready to have. Not, I wonder what my tri-cal goal says. It's like you need to be you need to know what your body needs and what your heart needs and what your mind needs in order to carry yourself through to have the best day that you can have on that day. And again, like no lead up is perfect. It's like we battled injuries with him and we had to be really careful with long runs, car wreck, stressful life. It's like, it's all there. It's how you navigate, and you gotta be patient and just do your best on race day.
It's an incredible story. I think it sums it up really well. I think it sums up Ironman racing really well too. And I couldn't help but think that, as a guy who doesn't use power, and I can definitely see the benefits of it, and I'm interested in it on a lot of levels. But I also think, like, man, that must be a weird feeling because like every day's different, right? Even in training, some days I'm sure you feel like you're going to nail that power and it's easy, and the other days it's not, and what have you. And if you come into a race with that kind of a power goal in mind, and it seems hard, I could just see how that would mentally fry a lot of people from the get-go. It's like, I have to hit this number. And that's the weird one, right? Because like, as we talk about a lot, it changes over the course. I mean, you're talking about mile 15. He was probably like, I can't hit that. So, but if you didn't know that number and you didn't even pay attention to it, which is probably kind of what happened on the run when he was just going by feel, he would have, he's at the low end of power, even below it. And maybe by the end of that bike, without even thinking about it, he's way above it, but feeling good, so like, who knows how that energy and that feeling is going to transfer throughout a race. And, I've always been curious about how people do that. Like, especially when they come out with this goal in mind to be at a certain power and just stay there. To me, that seems like it would be really difficult, because it's, first of all, you might not be ready to be at that number when you start, and it may take a while to get there. And the patience it must take a lot of times just to see that number come into play. And then do you have the confidence that you feel better to maybe push it beyond that a little bit? Those are all like, as a guy who always goes by feel or has always gone by feel, that's how I look at it. But so I could see how it could be a gauger, but to be married to it has got to be tricky at times.
Tricky. Mm-hmm. As always, we appreciate you tuning in, giving us your time. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for allowing us to have a Monday off. Well, not really off, but off for the podcast. But yeah, we hope you tuned in and enjoyed it and stuck with us through the entire thing. Race happy, race healthy, enjoy yourself. If you have any questions, comments, definitely concerns, go to Mike. He is at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns for me, reach out to me directly, c26coach@gmail.com. And if you haven't or need to or want to, stop by our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community, as well as our club membership. You can hop on the coaching tab, click on it, scroll, I think 3 spots down, and click on that for more information. It is, we're offering that for our 2021 season. Basically, you give us your race schedule, and we plan the year for you. Take away the stress, set you up for success. Ooh.
Take away the stress.
Take away the stress, set you up for success.
The
Zinger.
club. Yeah, the club's open. Go up there and check it out. We've got a lot of people coming in. It's going to be a great group. We're going to have a lot of stuff going on and set you up for the year. It's a good program. I like the people. Everybody's, I think, having fun, doing a good job so far. So check it out.
And 50 Cent would love to find you in the club.
Find you in the club.
See you, dude.
All right, man.